Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending Unite. I'm personally really excited and really happy to be here in person, finally. And also, thank you for attending my talk. So, for the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to try to address a pretty hairy question, which is, what's the difference between a good app and a great app? And so, of course, to try to make your app truly stand out, you try to provide an exceptional functional value. But a great app doesn't stop there. It also provides an outstanding user experience. And we've heard from our community of developers that it would be very helpful if Shopify could provide a little more guidance around what a good UI and UX look like. So today, that's exactly what I'm going to do, and I'm going to talk about our new app design guidelines. So my name is Mathilde. I'm the lead of our partner solutions team here at Shopify. I'm from Ottawa, Canada. I'm not as jet lagged as Steve, and I've been at Shopify for 7 years now. So today we'll talk first about why we came up with those app design guidelines, then why you should adopt them, of course what they actually are, and then make sure that you pay attention, because we'll wrap this up with a little pop quiz at the end, and I'm expecting everybody's participation, and I'm serious. And of course we'll finish the talk with some time for questions at the end. All right, so this has been a little bit of a common thread today, and probably something that you're quite familiar with right now, but Shopify, out of the box, really tries to provide all the foundational tools that our merchants need to get started. Yet, every business is unique, and as they grow, they can become increasingly complex. Shopify can't build everything for everyone. So that's why we try to make it easy to build direct integrations and add flexibility to the platform by using our APIs. So this is why our app ecosystem is really crucial to Shopify's mission, and why we try to prioritize equipping our developer community, you, with the right tools and knowledge so that you can flex Shopify for every merchant. But our shared success doesn't just depend on your app's functionality working. It also very much depends on the actual user experience. Apps should be easy to use and easy to navigate. We should promote predictability over uniqueness. And that's a very important concept here. And that's because we really want to help merchants work faster and more efficiently in the admin. So with our new app design guidelines, we're really aiming to have every app in the App Store look and feel like the Shopify admin. And again, this is to lower the learning curve for merchants when they install a new app, but also to reduce the friction and the cognitive load of users when they get their work done in the admin. Another important reason that was driving this decision of creating the app design guideline is the fact that more and more merchants rely on their mobile devices to access the Shopify admin. And that's especially true in emerging markets. So apps have to be designed with that in mind. And with years of experience designing commerce products for millions of merchants, Shopify has learned a thing or two about building great UX that our merchants love. So with those app design guidelines, we're actually sharing those practices with you so that you can remove the guesswork on your end and really focus on building amazing functionality. Another thing that I want to add is that our app design guidelines, they're really built in continuity with AppBridge. And as a quick reminder, AppBridge is a JavaScript library that allows you to embed your app directly inside the admin. And so our guidelines, they just go one step further in helping you build the best, most seamless experience for our merchants. And those guidelines, they're just that, guidelines. They're not a requirement, but rather instructions on how to build best-in-class apps. So to be clear, if your app today does not meet our guidelines, it will not impact your app's ranking. Really, you can take it or leave it, that's up to you. But we believe that a year from now, all of our top performing apps in the App Store, they will be following those guidelines. So the app design guidelines are divided into 6 sections. So the app structure, the layout, the visual design, content, navigation, and user experience. And today, we'll take a closer look at some of those sections individually, but make sure to check shopify.dev after the talk if you want to get any details on something we didn't cover. So that's something I already mentioned, but it bears repeating. Apps should work seamlessly with the Shopify admin. Again, it's to help our merchants work faster and more efficiently. And this starts with your app structure. It should consist of the same navigation elements as other apps, native apps in the admin. Then this was announced at Editions and also mentioned a couple times already today, but I'm still very excited to mention this because it's something that you've asked for a very long time and it's finally here. The full screen mode is available. So you can now showcase complex use cases directly in the admin without having to open a separate tab. So make sure that you take full advantage of this. The one thing I will mention though is it should be reserved for really immersive and specific tasks. So for example, if your app offers an editor or you have a preview for your user, then using the full screen mode might be a great option for you. Just remember that it should generally improve the experience of your user. A couple other things to keep in mind is also the fact that you should always include a way to navigate out of the full screen mode, and also that your app should not directly open in full screen mode by default. Moving on to the layout of your app. So the layout design is really the process of arranging visual elements on a page. And I covered that in the intro, but more and more of our merchants access their admin through all sorts of devices with all sorts of screen sizes. So apps should really be built with a mobile-first mindset. And having an app that is responsive is crucial. On the slide here, you can see a table with the different breakpoints that are applied in the admin. And on that note, you should know that the layout component in Polaris has responsiveness built directly into it. So make sure that you check it out. Another thing about the layout component beyond the built-in responsiveness is that it also provides, you guessed it, layouts that you can use for your apps. And we'll first start by looking at the differences between a single column layout and a multi-column layout. So here, this is actually a pretty bad example of a single column layout. And that's because while all the content there relates to the app, it's not actually part of a single workflow. So it would be best in this case to use a multi-column layout and one that does not span the entire width of the page. On the other hand, here you can see that it's a perfect example for a single column layout because the merchant can scan the information quickly and really focus on one single obvious task. So another thing with the layout is the use of containers. And most of your content should live in containers. This is because using containers will really help structure your content and create a natural hierarchy of information. So in the example here, you can see that by putting long, dense content right on the background, it really makes this app feels disconnected from the rest of the admin and also reduces readability. Where here, by using containers, it naturally organizes and separates the information in a much more logical way. So users can really take what they need from one container before moving on to the next one. All right, now visual design. That section has everything to do with aesthetics, so colors, fonts, images, all that good stuff. And we'll start by looking at branding. We all know how powerful strong branding can be. And whether your app is exclusive to Shopify or available across multiple platforms, we know that standing out from your competition plays a crucial part in your success. We get that. So we really encourage you to use illustrations and colors to express your brand. Now, the merchant's needs should stay ahead of you trying to make your app unique. And that's because, remember, we're trying to promote predictability over uniqueness. So setting your app apart from the competition shouldn't mean having a strong brand, means setting yourself apart from the competition. That makes sense. But it shouldn't mean setting yourself apart from the Shopify admin. And so in the examples here, on the left, this would fail our guidelines because you shouldn't alter elements that are present in other parts of the admin. And for the example on the right, this is actually a perfect example of the overuse of branding and custom colors. So it makes that element feel really disconnected from the rest of the admin, and it's also quite distractful. An appropriate use of branding still conveys what your brand is all about, but it doesn't clash or intrude with the rest of the admin. And colors and images are a great way to do that without needing to alter core elements provided by Polaris. And speaking of colors, we know that they play a big role in the merchant's experience and also have a big impact on the cognitive load of your users. So make sure that you use colors that are complementary with the rest of the admin. And while we allow you to change the color of the primary action, make sure that you're not confusing your users by picking a color that is inconsistent with the rest of the admin. And the last thing I'll mention here is that when picking your colors, you should make sure that they meet a minimum contrast ratio. And that's especially true when used with text or with interactive elements. The use of custom color definitely makes sense, especially from a branding perspective. But remember, I said it before, I'll say it again, merchants are in the admin to get their work done, and so we want to pick colors that complement your app, but that don't cause distractions. And to help you with that, you can find our color guidelines in Polaris. So we talked a lot about the look and feel of your app and the aesthetics, the colors, all that. But I think now we can shift gears a little bit and spend some time on the actual content. So again, no surprise, merchants are in the admin to get their work done, right? And a big part of that is understanding what's happening in your app. So the words you choose matter, and the way you use them as well. So avoid using idioms or technical jargon, because remember that a large portion of our merchants, they're not necessarily native English speakers. I'm a great example of that. They might also not be as tech savvy as you are. Ultimately, your voice is really a reflection of who you are and what your brand is about. But just as with the visual aspect of your app, it should integrate well with the rest of the admin. And to help you with that, you can find our voice and tone principles in Polaris. So when designing the content of your app, you should really try to use plain language. So be candid, but not too blunt or overly casual. Make sure that your tone is consistent throughout your app. We really want to help the merchant get their work done, right? So you want to guide them through what they need to do in your app. So encourage them to take the next action and guide them through the process, but avoid hand-holding or prescribing. So finally, it's all about navigation and the flow of your app. And the way a user navigates through your app is really important and a big part of their overall experience. So make sure that the different sections of your app make sense as a whole, but also that they transition in a logical way from one to the next. Because if users can get moved from task to task in a logical and progressive way, this is just going to lead to frustrations. So build your app's navigation around what merchants need to do in your app. Make sure that you show them where they are in the process, what has just happened, and what will happen next. And practically speaking, this means using navigation elements such as breadcrumbs so that a user can go to the previous page without using the browser buttons, for example. And another really rule of thumb is to avoid sending your users outside of the Shopify admin to complete key actions. So that's it for the lecture. Now it's all on you. We're going to start a little pop quiz. Again, expecting everybody to participate. Pretty easy. I'm going to show you some examples here, and I'm going to ask you if, yes, you think this would meet our design guidelines. You raise your hand, and then I'll ask if you think that it doesn't meet the guidelines, and you raise your hand. All right? Easy enough? Ready? Let's do this. So does this meet our app design guidelines? Show of hands. Okay. And who thinks that it does not meet our app design guidelines? Hands up. Yep. Okay. Well, you were all right. This meets our app design guidelines because we're using a single column layout, and it's to display one single obvious task. All right, next one. This one is easy. Who thinks this meets our guidelines? Hand up. Who thinks it does not meet our guidelines? Well, I have to say, guys, so far you're the best of all the stops, so kudos. Indeed, this would fail the guidelines because the primary color, the color of the primary action has been changed to a color that is inconsistent with the rest of the admin and quite confusing. And if you're wondering, no, this is not how the app actually looks like. All right, how about this one? Who thinks that this meets our guidelines? All right, and who thinks that it doesn't? Well, this side of the room paid more attention. I'm kidding. This would fail because you should have used a container here. There is plain text directly on the background of the app, and so that makes it feel more disjointed, and it reduces readability. Okay, the next one is a tricky one. Who thinks this meets our guidelines? Okay, and who thinks it doesn't? Gotcha. It does meet our guidelines. And that's really because, so we have a two-column layout, but the actions, like the workflow and the actions that are in each column really relate to the one next to it. Yeah. All right, this is our last one, our last chance. Who thinks that this meets our design guidelines? Okay, and who thinks that it doesn't? All right, well, you're correct. We're missing the button to navigate out of the full screen mode. So that's it for my talk. I hope that this really gave you at least an element of an answer from our initial question, which was, what's the difference between a good app and a great app? Or at least it really gives you an idea of how we would answer that question. These are my details here. And before we move on to the Q&A, we need to beat Steve, please. So take out your phones, and please leave us some feedback. More seriously, this really helps us improve our events.